Okay, is everything set back right? Okay, I think I got everything back to order. Hello, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LeDev, and I'm here to provide a opinion on the currently revealed cards of the Boomsday project as of April 27th. Now, there's more coming up. There's as we speak, and yeah, due to technical difficulties, it did cause me to miss a few days. So this video is going to probably take a while since I'm going to go through a lot of cards since, well, a lot of them had been revealed. Nevertheless, though, let's get this started off with a Druid card, a 1-mana common biology project that has the simple ability that each player will gain 2 mana crystals. So, let's say you play this on turn 1, automatically you get 2 mana crystals, as well as your opponent, which then during their next turn, then will have 3 mana crystals, and so on. And this card is part of what's called the Project Cycle, which is essentially powerful spells that are good for your class, but it comes at the cost that you're giving the same benefits to the quote-unquote opponent. Now, there's some cards that twist with this kind of quote-unquote you're benefiting the opponent in quotation marks, but we'll get to those once we get to those. Overall, this card is, I think, good, but I do think there's an element of it that's a trap. I think there are people who are going into best-case mentality with this card and thinking, well, Druid is always the ramp class. They will benefit from this ramp, and they're going to go into the ultimate infestation quick and such. I think people are forgetting that while you are fastening your game plan and you might approach your game plan a lot more efficient, you're also helping your opponent out a lot. And there's some matchups where, how do I put this? Sure, let's say you go best case mentality and you're like, oh, I got a hand with Biology Project, Wild Growth. I'll Biology Project, Wild Growth, and then have 5 mana, and then it's going to be 6 mana next turn. Yes! You do have to realize that you're giving your opponent 6 mana crystals on their turn. And boy, they are going to take advantage of that. No sweat about that. I mean, for Pete's sakes, they could play a Cairn. And unless you can draw into your removal and such, you're in for a bad time. Really, the only reason why I'm not totally out on this card is the fact that there is some good high-end cards that Druid do have to help them out with the quote-unquote emptying their hand using the spell, such as Ultimate Infestation. So many card draw spells they have, actually. But I still think this is a card you have to be very careful of. It's powerful, but realize, depending on how the meta forms, this card can either be very beneficial or very costly to play. Next up on the list is a rare for the Druid class, and it's Dendrologist, which, for those of you who are not in the scientific field, Dendrologist is the people who specialize in the science of trees. So, yeah, kind of a funny card in that sense. And the Battlecry is, if you control a Treant, which, for those of you who don't know, you generate Treants either through token manipulation spells that Druid has. And there's a couple of them. There's, like, Force of Nature is the most popular one that people can think of. There's... Actually, I can't remember all of them right off the bat, but if you go back in the history of Hearthstone, there's a ton of ways to generate Treants. So it's saying, as long as you control one, you can discover a spell, which, for those of you who are not familiar, discover means you have a choice of 3 cards, either ranging from neutral to, I guess in this case it's only going to be Druid cards, since spells are restricted to class-oriented types, so you'll pretty much have your choice of a Druid spell, essentially. Overall, while there's the temptation to put this like in a token Druid type of deck to help you get your net Savage Roar and such, and there's also the thought that you might actually now, with this card, support a Treant deck archetype, and we have a lot of cards that can help with that. I don't know if it's enough, though. I do think it's one that people will try out at the very least, because it is a tempting thought to make an alteration to token Druid. But I don't know if I would want to go out of the way, especially with how the roundabout ways you have to get Treants to get them so to play this card. Overall, though, if Token Druid relying more on the Treant sub-strategy does exist, they're going to rely on this card a lot. I mean, discovering some powerful spells like Ultimate Infestation, Swipe, Starfall, etc., etc., etc. Druids have a lot of good spells. They also have a lot of okay spells, so you got to keep that in mind. But overall, I do think this is a fun card to toy with in token archetypes, but be very cautious when using it. Another card, though, that for Druid, though, that is really good, though, and might actually help make Treants decks type of thing, is Landscaping. It's a free mana spell that says, summon 2/2/2 Treants. So, it's a free mana 4/4, essentially. Yeah, this card's really good. Especially in the token archetypes in the current meta, they might actually play the spell a lot. I mean, the fact that you get the 2/2 Treants, which then you can buff with a variety of token-based spells, and it's also just hard to get rid of 2/2/2s rather than one big 4/4. So, overall, this one's just kind of an easy one to say. Yes, it's going to see play in token-based decks. It's a good card. And also, if Treant decks are going to be a thing, they're going to be relying on this card a lot. And another card to help if you are going to make the Treant deck a thing, to be the quote-unquote payoff, is the 10-mana Mulch Muncher. It's an 8/8 mech with Rush, but it will cost 1 less for each friendly Treant that died this game. Now, if you do make the Treant deck, is this a good payoff? I think it's decent. The catch, though, is I think majority of Treant decks, though, are going to be a lot token-based, like they want to keep their board presence. And to make this card work, you have to have your Treants die. I mean, there are some token decks that don't mind trading into the board to help keep a consistent board presence, and maybe that's where this card is actually efficient, because you're not wanting to get this at 0. If you can just get this on like at 6 or 7 mana when you do efficient trading, then you can use this for trades rather than your Treants, and that's the possibility. However, though, it's one of those cards I have to see play personally before I can make a conjecture of whether or not it's going to see play or not. I think the most this is going to see play, though, is if Spiteful Druid is a thing. They love their 10-mana spells, getting a Tarantus, and getting this is not bad, using Spiteful Summoner, and then revealing Ultimate Infestation, and then getting an 8/8 mech with Rush. That's not bad. Plus, also, it could also synergize with potential magnetic cards that are in the neutral slot, so that's something to keep in mind. Overall, I think the Treant deck still needs like a couple more tools before it becomes a thing, but I don't think this is a bad card for that deck, and I don't think it's a bad card overall, in my general opinion. Also, one of the last cards they had revealed for Druid at the current moment, since we didn't have the legendary spell revealed, is actually the legendary minion, which is Flublidid, forgive me my pronunciation, Flubdinus Floop. I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing that, but it's a 4-mana free 4 that has the ability that while it's in your hand, this is a free 4 copy of the last minion you played. Note, it doesn't say until end of turn, so this is consistent. And boy, all the combo players are looking at this card and drooling. And honestly, this is a really good card for those decks. I mean, playing a turn 9 Malygos, then this becomes a Malygos. Somebody removes your Malygos because they don't want you to go off with your combo. Oh hey, play your Forbiddenous Floop copy of Malygos, and then do all the damage spells and such, and have a good blast. Although, though, I think this is actually also decent in some other deck archetypes. I think this is a decent card also in Token Druid. Yeah, I know. Because, as many people seem to forget, Token Druid does also, other than generating tokens, do have a bunch of value-based creatures to help generate tokens. Your Violet Teachers, your buff spells. Like, even some might even play that Deathrattle, where it gives all your minions +1 attack or such. And when you look at it that way, I think this card might actually just be decent as a one-of to actually just copy those quote-unquote minion spells. Because most of the time, that's the only ones you're quote-unquote copying, and the fact that it's a free 4 makes it a decent butt. Now, there is a catch to this card. I think it is one of those cards you do have to brew your deck a teeny bit around it, because there are some cards where I'm not sure. I think most people, when they want to play with this card, they want to get the big minions for a cheap cost. Could you want a 4-mana free for loot hoarder? That's a free for. That leave much best to discuss. I mean, that's actually an interesting thought there. So yeah, it's definitely going to be valuable in the sense that you're going to get bigger minions for a cheaper cost from this, especially value-based minions. The question is, though, would you want value-based minions that are technically a lower cost, but you are paying for the stat boost of those with the free for? That's actually an interesting thought. Overall, though, this is a great Druid Legendary. This is one that's going to see play in combo decks. I think it's going to see some play in token decks. And I think it's going to see some play in janky value-based giant Druid decks, personally. Floopiness Floop. You are going to craft a lot on the meta, in my personal opinion. Going from Druid, we're now going to go to Rogue spells that have been... Rogue spells / creatures that have been revealed for the expansion. And they actually have a pretty good doozy of a common minion that got revealed. It's the 2-mana free 2 Lab Recruiter. And that's a Battlecry. Shuffle 3 copies of friendly minions into your deck. Well, this is a powerful comment for Rogue. I mean, sheesh. There's many people that obviously will say that this is the slightly nerfed gain up that Rogue's got now, since really you can only shuffle copies of minions in your deck. But there is a lot of value-based minions in Rogue that do like this card a lot. I mean, I can imagine a couple of spells you want to shuffle in. Hey, maybe shuffle in a couple of Edward Van Cleaves. Maybe if you're playing Kingsbane Rogue, shuffle a couple in of that... it's that pirate minion that gives 1 attack. I'm having a brain fart on the name. Oh, shuffle in 4 Artifices. Shuffle free... Oh, not 4. Yeah, 3 Artifices. I mean... Shuffle 3 of these in, so then you can actually get more Lab Recruiters to shuffle more value-based minions in. Shuffle 3 of those Wolves that generate a random class from your opponent card. I mean, the amount of possibilities you can have with playing this card is legitimately absurd. Yeah, this is going to be a common that's going to be seen play in Rogue. No sweat about that. I say... Be prepared, you're going to see Rogue shuffle a lot of copies of cards in their deck. Now, one counter-argument I will say before we go is some people are wondering if this is going to mess with the deck consistency, which I think that's not really a great argument, since really when you're shuffling 3 copies of your own minions, you're kind of assisting yourself in your own game plan. If you want 3 more of this specific minion to take advantage of either a Battlecry, Deathrattle, etc., etc., you'll probably have the implication of knowing, oh hey, there's going to be 3 more copies. Nice. Now, there's one card that's been revealed that I think is going to, quote-unquote, add cards to your deck that I think is a legitimate argument for not being amazing, but we'll get to that. But next up on the Rogue list of minions that they get from the expansion is the Bright Nozzle Crawler. A 4-mana 2/4 mech that has the Deathrattle to summon a 1/1 ooze with Poisonous and Rush. Now, the closest comparison probably people can think of this is... I'm thinking Slime Belcher right off the bat. Though, no, Sludge Belcher, that's the name of it. Instead of getting a 1/2 taunt, you get a 1/1 ooze with Poisonous and Death Rush. And this is one of those weird, kind of like, overall you generate... value minions, because there's some... This one's a weird one to talk about. On one hand, the one problem with this card is that it can be very easy to manipulate for your opponent. If they don't really want you to have the ooze, they can destroy this minion and then destroy the ooze on their turn. Now, it will probably require some resources to do that, and some awkward trading, which that might be the best benefit this card's going to have for it. But there is also the possibility that this card might be strong in the sense that it's very unassuming at first. It's like, okay, it's a 2/4, I don't have to deal with it right off the bat, and I just have to just make sure they don't have any minions and such to trade into. Okay, but the thing that makes this a little bit strong is the fact that it's a mech. So, there's all the little mech synergy cards with the magnetic keyword and such. So, Let's say you play this on turn 4. The opponent doesn't have anything to do with it because they don't want to play anything to make it efficient enough for trades and such. And then you play War Gear on it. And then it becomes a bigger threat. So then they probably will want to try to answer it and such. And I think that's the strength of this card. I think it's one of those where it's very unassuming, but like Rogue usually does, you can do a pretty nifty trick to help give yourself board state advantage. Plus, the Deathrattle is very beneficial for trades and such, like getting an Ooze, which can help pretty much be spot removal for a majority of minions on the battlefield. That's very effective. And also, I think this is a card that is very cute to use Cube on, so then you create more little mechs, and then they have that Deathrattle and such. I think this card is a lot better than it looks. I don't think it's great, per se, but I do think there's a lot more tricks you can do with it than, hopefully use it as an alternative Vine Splayer or such. I'd say keep your eye out for this little guy. And a spell that is potentially very spicy that Rogue just now got is a 4-mana Academic Espionage, which does the ability to shuffle 10 cards from your opponent's class into your deck, and they will cost 1 mana. Now, I think many people are kind of thinking best case mentality with this card. They're thinking, I can get like 10 Treants in my deck, or I can get 10 very powerful spells, and they cost 1 mana. Yay! Now, don't get me wrong, the fact that they cost 1 does give this beneficial, since it does help with rogue strategies, like with combo cards and such. And also there is the beneficial synergies with Test Greymane and all the Burgle cards that are in the meta. However, I think people need to be very cautious with this card. I think it's a fun card, don't get me wrong, and Burgle archetypes in general are kind of improvisational fun card archetypes. They're like, okay, let's see what tools I get from the opponent, and then try to form a win-based condition off that, or be very mid-rangey based and such. The problem, though, is the fact that you do shuffle the 10 random cards in your deck. And the reason why I'm making a big deal about that is the factor that in most card-based games, you want to try to keep your deck size to a minimal, what the minimal size is. Like, for some it's 60 cards, for some it's 30 cards. And the main reason for that is to keep consistency when you draw your cards and have an overall gameplay strategy. When you shuffle 10 random cards into your deck, you are, in a way, even with the discount, you are paying the cost that your deck is going to be less consistent, if that makes sense. Like, you're going to probably draw... Sure, there are probably times where you draw the 1-mana Pyroblast if you're playing against a mage. But you might also pull a 1-mana Mana Worm and such, and if that doesn't help you assist with your overall game plan, well... yeah. Now, there are ways to cheap out drawing the cards from this deck, such as using one of the legendary spells they provided. Plus, also, there's actually a really nifty trick that people pointing out is the Witchwood Piper, helping to draw one of the 1-cost minions in Fury, since it draws the lowest cost minion from your deck. And that's a cute trick and all. Overall, though, I think this is mostly a fun card. But I say be very, very cautious when you play this. Because the variance is there, and the fact that it does break your deck's consistency is a cost. But I think it's going to provide some shenanigans. Yeah, this is going to be a card that's going to probably provide some random Trollden video that somebody's going to laugh at. How many of them we're going to produce? Well, we'll find out when this card comes out. Speaking of legendary spells, the one that Rogues got for their new set, and oh, by the way, one of the new card mechanics in the set is that each class is going to get a legendary spell, which means, of course, since it's legendary, you can only have one of in the deck. So, what's the legendary spell for Rogue? It's Myla's Unstable Element. It's a 5-mana spell. Draw the rest of your deck. This card is kind of an absurd draw engine, which is kind of an understatement. Now, this one's a hard one to think about because this is a card that I don't know if you want to play on turn 5 in very rare circumstances. because remember, you start off with on average 3 to 4 cards in your hand. So if you play this on turn 5, you're probably going to fill up with, say, on average, depending on how the average gameplay session goes, maybe still 3, 4 if you're a control-based, 4 or more if you're a control-based deck. So you're going to get on average about 3 to 4 cards, and then entirely mill your deck out. That seems very unintuitive. However, and this is the biggest however though, this is probably a really good late game draw spell. Because in the sense of, let's say you're playing a aggro to mid-range based rogue deck, most of the time you're just trying to get into for the early damage, and if you accidentally are lean into the late game and you don't have much of a hand, you draw pretty much a new hand, and hopefully that benefits you to help you finish off the game and such. And I think that's where the main strength comes for this. Plus, also a nifty trick that people are pointing out is, oh hey, I can Myra's late game, I can Myra's Unstable Element, draw the rest of my deck, which is probably my game plan, and hopefully have most of my game pieces, and then I play that Academic Espionage, and then I don't mill myself, plus hopefully I'll get some nifty cards to help benefit my late game and such. And I think that is the best way to look at this. I think this is a spell you want to play very late game. Do not play this early. You're going to regret it if you play it early. I'd say you play this spell, say, on turn 9, maybe turn 10 or 11, and then I think it's just efficient. Overall, it's a very absurd draw spell, but be very, 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 very cautious when using it. Because if you play this card at the wrong time, you're going to lose the game faster than you can say Timbuktu on a Bayou. Next on the list is the Pogo-Hopper, a 2-mana 1/1 mech that has gain 2/2 for each other Pogo-Hopper you played this game. I don't think this card's good. I think this is one of those cards where it's interesting to play at first, because it's one of those where it feels bad because first you have to play it as a 2-mana 1/1, which that stats is really bad, and then you have to use other means in the bound to get more Pogo-Hoppers, because if you only have 2 in your deck, then you're just getting a 2-mana 1/1 and a 2-mana 3/3, which that's going to feel really bad. So I think they're going to try to find ways that you try to quote-unquote get more Pogo-Hoppers. You can use it using the common spell, the Lab Recruiter. You can also bounce spells, which I think is kind of cute how they're trying to hint with that with, oh, it's hopping around. It's going to bounce from the battlefield to your hand. And it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's some people that are even making the argument that this might be a good Jade replacement. And honestly, I don't think so. And the main reason why I don't think so is because of the factor that when mostly the theme that came with the power of the Jade archetype for Jade Druid and Jade Rogue was the factor is that there were spells as well as growing your Jade army. Like, oh, you can ramp. Here's a Jade. Oh, you're going to deal some damage. Here's a Jade. Oh, here's a taunt minion. Here's a Jade. So there are cards that help overall not only build up your Jade army, but also build up your board presence and such by either using removal spells, taunt minions, ramp, etc., etc., etc. The problem with Pogo-Hopper is you're kind of building your whole deck around it, and when you play it, you're only getting the Pogo-Hopper. Which, yeah, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, but remember, this can be easily silenced. This can easily be removed. Overall, I think some people are going to have fun with this, and I think there are going to be some decks that will try to mess with it. And the fact that it is a mech does synergize with magnetic, so that is a thing to keep in mind. And it is also, to some extent, a better, well, not even better, more like an alternate Van Cleef, since you have an alternate way rather than having to go storm out your hand and such. Like, you just have to have a consistent playing of the minion. But I think this is a significant cost to try to win with this. Nevertheless, it might hop in the meta for a little bit, but I think it's going to bounce out faster before when people find answers to this card. Last card they revealed for Rogue so far is also now their legendary minion, which is Myra Rotspring, a 5-mana Fortitude that has the ability of a Battlecry. Discover a Deathrattle minion, and then also gain its Deathrattle. This is actually a very interesting card. Now, don't get me wrong, those stats are kind of if for a 5-mana. It will be easily tradable. Don't get me wrong with that. But I do feel like this is a very beneficial card draw engine. I mean, the fact that you discover a minion, it puts it into your hand, and discover effect does give you the ability to choose what you want, and hopefully adapt to the current circumstances. Now, it is random, so there are times where it might not benefit you. But Rogue has been getting a lot of efficient Deathrattle minions that I think discovering is going to be a lot more better in Rogue for Deathrattle than it was in a while. I mean, remember, there were people who played that 1-mana Deathrattle, discover a Deathrattle minion spell. And the fact that you get that on a 4-2, and the fact that it's going to gain its Deathrattle, so you have the benefit of whatever the Deathrattle is, as well as drawing a quote-unquote new instant of the Deathrattle minion in your hand, that's really good. Now, the thing is, the catch of this card is, I don't know what type of deck would want this card. I don't know if Miracle wants it. I don't know if a mid-range deck wants it. Maybe mid-range. Maybe a cube lock variation of Deathrattle. Rogue might want this. I mean, there's been that variation where we do have cards like Rattle the Bones and such, so, and with Dollmaster Dorian, so, yeah, that's actually a good thought, actually. But still, then when you draw this, it doesn't get a Deathrattle, it gets Deathrattle on the Battlecry. I think this is one, as you can tell from my brewing brain kind of going, that this is going to be a fun card to toy with. And I think it's overall a good card. It's just going to have the very awkward nature of what deck do you want to put this in? You might just put it in as your 30th card and just get overall card draw value, which that's probably going to be its main strength. But, overall, I think this is a card that will just see some moderate play. Also, now if you excuse me, I gotta end this video for now. I'll try to do more of these reveal videos as soon as I can. Sorry for the delay. Now, if you excuse me, I got a little puppers that wants attention. I hope you all have a lovely day. See you later.